Well, Trump's tariff puppet is at it again. The U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer says Trump's latest tariffs will not have any economic impact at all. But then, the Bank of Canada surveys the people who actually watch the economy for a living, and 96% of them identify trade tensions as one of the biggest threats to Canadian growth.
So basically, Greer is telling everyone the bill is harmless while Canada is staring at the proof that tells the opposite story. Either the Trump administration has discovered a miracle cure for tariffs, or somebody is asking the public to ignore a very expensive problem.
Trump wants fear to create urgency. Instead, he may be turning economic dependence into Canada's biggest political motivation to diversify. Today, we're looking past the rhetoric, highlighting the absurdity of these claims, and telling you what this really means for Canadians. Let's get into it.
So, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer was asked whether the latest tariffs could influence the Federal Reserve or damage the American economy. His answer was remarkably confident. He said he didn't think the tariffs would have any impact at all. Really? Now, to be clear here, he wasn't commenting on the 50% tariffs Trump just threatened. He was talking about another tariff they announced just the other day. The new Section 301 duties. I know, it's hard to keep track of all these tariffs.
It's just exhausting. But his argument was that the new measures apply to a smaller group of countries, and that the rates around 10 or 12.5% for many affected trading partners are just similar to tariff measures that the world has already been dealing with.
Now, on paper, that sounds perfectly tidy. Smaller lists, familiar rates, nothing to worry about, right? Wrong.
The question is not whether the latest tariff rate is larger than every previous tariff. The question is whether another layer of tariffs, investigations, threats, and sudden policy changes adds more cost and more uncertainty to companies already trying to plan.
If a business is already dealing with a 10% border charge, adding another 10 or 12.5% does not make the original charge disappear. Calling the new damage normal, it doesn't turn it into free trade.
No, it simply moves the baseline. The administration can point to the previous disruption and say, oh, nothing has changed, even while businesses are trying to figure out what the heck the next announcement is going to cost them down the line.
Now, compare Greer's statement with the Bank of Canada's latest market participant survey. The bank surveyed 26 people from banks, pension managers, insurers, and research organizations. People whose job it is to assess the economy before it moves.
96% identified rising trade tensions as a downside risk to Canadian growth. 92% said easing trade tensions would actually improve the outlook.
Now, this isn't just a fringe political opinion. This isn't just one angry commentator on television. It is the overwhelming majority of market participants surveyed by Canada's central bank.
And the survey was already warning about trade tensions before every consequence of the latest tariff threat had even fully landed. The survey itself also was taken before the 50% tariff threat. Imagine what that opinion would be now. The median forecast in that survey put Canadian real GDP growth at only 1.3% for 2026, with inflation expected to reach 2.6% by the end of the year.
The big warning here is about the cumulative pressure. Companies delay investment, suppliers hold back expansion, and businesses hesitate before committing money to a market where the rules can change because wildfire smoke made it over the border, or Trump's feelings got hurt, or for not being invited to a bridge opening.
The problem here is that Greer is discussing the tariff as if it's one isolated number. Canadian businesses and Canadians are looking at the entire problem. The threat, the negotiation, the investigation, the exemption, the reversal, and then another threat. Tariffs don't happen in a vacuum. Trump is selling stability by comparison. In Canada, we're measuring risk by behavior. Now, I know which one I would trust more.
Now, Greer also defended the new measures by saying they cover fewer countries than the temporary tariff that recently expired. But the U.S. government has said that those 60 economies still account for roughly 99.4% of American imports.
That's the sleight of hand here, right? You see it. The list of countries may be shorter, but the reach across the American economy is still massive.
And the administration is already discussing another Section 301 investigation involving excess industrial capacity across 16 major trading partners, including China, Vietnam, Mexico, and the European Union.
Yes, so while Washington says the current measures have no meaningful impact, it's also preparing the next investigation that could produce the next round of tariffs. So which one is it?
Yeah, and that is difficult for companies to treat everything as business as usual. A manufacturer in Ontario, Michigan, Ohio, or Pennsylvania, they still need to know what materials will cost them 3 months from now.
Yeah, the tariff rate is only one part of the calculation. The bigger problem is that the person setting the rate keeps moving the goalposts every single week.
Now, let's bring Canada into the center of the picture here. Trump has threatened a 50% tariff on selected Canadian products, potentially covering about $28 billion in annual exports.
The proposed list includes products like alcohol, dairy, cement, clothing, electronics, and other goods. The administration has also argued that these measures can apply even when Canadian products would otherwise qualify for treatment under CUSMA.
There they go, moving the goalpost again. And the explanation, it keeps changing too. Cars, dairy, alcohol, national security, forced labor enforcement, unfair trade practices. Each justification arrives with a new tariff attached.
Yeah, for Canadian exporters, the practical question is simple. If an agreement can be overridden whenever the White House wants more leverage, well, how much confidence can a company place in that agreement? I'll tell you the answer to that one. None.
Prime Minister Carney has refused to negotiate against Trump's clock. He says Canada will respond if the tariffs take effect while avoiding preemptive retaliation before August 19th. That leaves room for talks without handing Washington concessions simply because another deadline appeared.
Patience only works when it's paired with alternatives. Canada has to protect businesses facing immediate pressure while also expanding access to Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and other markets.
We can see that plan playing out in front of our own eyes. Ottawa has set a goal of doubling exports to non-U.S. markets by 2035, including a major strategy to expand the Port of Vancouver Gateway. Canada also concluded trade negotiations with the United Arab Emirates this month.
Listen, trade diversification, it's slow, expensive, and mostly frustrating. Every new route, agreement, and customer still makes future pressure a little less effective, though.
But every new threat gives Canada another reason to do those things faster.
And that's the result that Trump can't stomach. He wants Canada to feel that the U.S. is unavoidable. But that is completely backfiring on him. His own policies are actually teaching Canadians to ask what can be done without the U.S.
And American households and businesses are also part of the bill. This isn't just a Canadian political argument. A tariff on a Canadian product is generally collected from the American importer bringing that product across the border. And where do they pass that cost on to? The consumer. You pay for it. The money doesn't just magically come out of Canada's treasury because a U.S. official announced it from Washington.
Greer says the tariffs will not affect the Federal Reserve's decisions. Well, perhaps the administration hopes that just repeating that claim over and over again will stop markets from asking the harder questions.
But a central bank does not only look at the headline rate. It watches inflation, business confidence, investment, employment, and the risk that a policy shock spreads through the economy.
And that's why the Bank of Canada survey is so important here. Canadian market participants are not panicking over just one number. They're warning about the cost of a relationship being managed through permanent confrontation.
Now that strengthens Carney's case for moving carefully. A quick deal might produce immediate pain, but a one-sided deal could reward Washington for manufacturing uncertainty. Canada needs durable rules while it builds options elsewhere.
Trump's goal here is leverage. The threat is supposed to make Canada and Canadians feel more cooperative. And if Carney and his government accepted a rush deal today, Washington learns that that pressure actually works. And what that does is it invites another demand tomorrow, followed by another threat the day after that.
So Canada's way forward is clear to me. If Canada holds its position, protects the most exposed workers and businesses, and builds more consumers outside the United States, each future threat becomes less powerful.
That's why Canada needs a two-track response. Keep essential trade moving wherever cooperation still benefits both countries. At the same time, reduce the number of areas where Trump can threaten Canada with total economic disruption.
Trump wants Canadians to see a threat so large that resistance feels impossible. Instead, the threat is making the case for a more independent Canadian economy.
Now, Greer may believe the tariffs are harmless because he wants to control the narrative. But Canadians, we're not falling for it. We're looking at the pattern, and the pattern is pushing the whole country towards patience, preparation, and a wider set of economic relationships.
So, what do you think? Is Greer genuinely convinced that these tariffs will have no economic impact, or is Washington simply trying to make the damage sound normal before the next round arrives?
And by the time the next tariff threat appears, do you think Canada will still be negotiating from dependence, or will Ottawa have built enough alternatives to stand up and say no?
Put your thoughts in the comments because we want to know what you think. And while you're down there, check out the pinned comment for our merch store, Substack, Facebook, and joining the A-Team.
And don't forget to give this a like, a hype, and a share so other people can learn about this and weigh in on it as well.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see ya tomorrow.
Ciao for now.